Right, good morning, Chris.
Hi Sophie, how are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you.
Great. So, thanks so much for joining us for Careers Week. Really excited to talk to you about everything that's going on where you work at the moment at Throneware.
hmm
So, can we just start off by just telling us a little bit about your business and what do you do?
Yeah, so we sort of specialize in mobile app development. So we'll make apps for phones, iOS, Android phones, but then we'll also build like servers to support them as well. So when you need an app, you need it to talk to a server in the cloud somewhere. So we'll work a lot on those to support the apps. And we do that for companies ranging anything from football gambling to games or to like medical companies, education companies, so like all different sectors basically.
So, there's quite a big spread of
Yeah,
different
quite a
clients to
range.
work with. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we could go a step back then, what's your backstory? So what made you to decide to start your own business?
Yeah, so I've always kind of known that I wanted to start my business even when I was at school. Um, I went to college and did A levels. I did law, business studies, English, and computing. And then I went on to university. So I went to Durham and studied computer science there. And then, so I kind of knew that I wanted to start a business, but I didn't really have any experience in the industry. I'd done a few placements and things like that, but nothing kind of serious. So I joined a graduate program of a software consultancy in Newcastle called Scott Logic. And I worked there for nearly 5 years, maybe a bit more than 5 years actually, and kind of got experience of working as a software consultant in loads of different industries for loads of different clients, and just kind of found out like which parts of software that I enjoyed the most. And for me, it was always mobile apps, so that's kind of what led me to start a business that sort of specializes in mobile apps.
Ah, okay, that's really interesting. I didn't know because people can go so many paths and end up where they are. So it's really
Yeah.
interesting that you went that higher educational route.
Mhm.
Um, so you said you kind of knew you wanted to have your own business when you were at school. Did you know that you wanted to work within the tech industry from a young age?
Yeah, so I've always kind of been like interested in tech, and I've always kind of like been interested in games, and that's kind of what got me interested in tech to start with. So I'm getting on a bit now. I'm 32, so
So
um, yeah. When I think when I was like 4, my granddad was a director of a company, and he used to take me into the office, and he had like one of the first computers that were like being used in like mainstream in offices around the country. So before it was all like paper based stuff, but his office got these new computers in, and he took me in to like see them. And I kind of used to go in with him on a Saturday morning and like help him on his computer and things like that. So that's really what got me interested in computers at first.
Oh wow! So it's been from a really young age.
Yeah, it was like the first version of like Windows that I was using, Windows 3 or something like that, 3.1. It was, yeah, quite a long time ago, but that's kind of what got me interested, because it was like this new thing that nobody had ever seen before.
Yeah.
Um, and it
Did
was like
you,
fascinating.
no, I bet. Like I can't even imagine kind of sparking those interests at such a young age. But your granddad probably had no idea that you would end up
Yeah.
continuing down that road from such a young
Yeah.
age.
Well, he always says to me, like, I taught you how to use a computer, don't forget. So, yeah, now it's me who helps him. But yeah, he always says that he taught me first, which is fair.
Oh, I love that. Um, so what, in your opinion, is the best thing about your job?
Um, I kind of, I really like to build things. So, like, I like to see something that I've worked on from like the initial idea, and then like putting it out to the public and seeing people using it. So it's like really what motivates me is like when I see somebody using an app that I've built, and I haven't installed it on their phone and said, "Here, try this." But yeah, so we worked on an app for Sunderland Council, which was a step counter app. So it's like whenever I go out around town and I see people using the app and there's like banners up for it, that's really, it feels like you've built that, and it's like really encouraging to know that.
Yeah, that must be so cool seeing your work just when
Yeah.
you're around town.
hmm
So you've said that you've obviously got loads of technical skills to do what you do, but you mentioned there about seeing it through from the initial concept. So do you also have to be quite creative for what you
Yeah,
do?
so it's like a lot of people think like software is just like science really, and there's only, you know, like there's only a certain way to do things, but it is very creative. It's interesting because you sort of, there's a million different ways to do things. So if somebody comes to you and says, I want an app that does this, you can do it one way, you can do it the other way, but it's about like thinking about all the different ways that you can do it and then coming up with the best way to do it and the best way to achieve it, which will, you know, be most useful for everybody who uses it. And then there's sort of, you know, there's the kind of visual side of things as well. So it's like where things are laid out on the screen, you've got to be quite creative with that. And you know, you've got to make it as easy as possible for the user, but you also want it to be interesting, so they'll keep coming back and keep using it.
I think that's really interesting because, like you say, I think people think software development
Yeah.
and you've just got to be good at knowing how to code.
Yeah.
That's part of it, but as you say, you've got to have that creative side as well.
Yeah, so obviously there is a lot of like science involved and it is very logical and things like that, but there is a lot of creative stuff around it as well.
I also wanted to know, so you've said what the best thing about your job might be. Is there a side that you would consider more, what's the most challenging part to your job?
Yeah, I think, you know, it can be tricky to work with certain clients who don't necessarily understand the process. So, you know, they think that like software is quite easy, but when you get into it, it's really quite complicated, and they think you should be able to make changes really quickly. I think, you know, you kind of learn to deal with that. So it's about like setting expectations with clients and things, which you know, you always have to do. But and then the other kind of side of it is it's hard when you start a business and you're kind of on your own to like learn all the other aspects of running a business as well. So, you know, I'd sat behind a desk for 5-6 years just writing code for a company. And my manager used to just come to me and say, this is what we need to build this week or whatever. And then I just go away and build it. But then when you start your own company, it's sort of, you've got to actually go out and you've got to win the work. So you need to be good at sales, you need to become a salesperson, but then you also need to do a lot of finance stuff as well. So like ensure that the money's coming in and that you're not spending more than you're making, and you're making a profit. So there's all those other skills that you have to learn, which if you've never done before, can be quite daunting. But yeah, I guess the best way is to just do it and get on with it, I suppose, and then you'll pick it up eventually.
That's I think so interesting for people to know, actually, you know, this is your main job, software developing, but you've got to be creative, but you've also got to be good at all those other things that you've mentioned as well.
Yeah. So it's like communicating with clients is probably the hardest part of the job. Like you can give me some code and I will go away and write it, and that's fairly easy, but like actually getting out of a client what they actually want to build is often the hard part.
So I think from what you've said there, it's probably important for people at school to know that maybe you didn't have all those skills straight away. Maybe coding was your best skill, perhaps, not to put words in your mouth, but maybe you had to work a bit more at being better at those soft skills. Would you say that's about right?
Exactly. Because as soon as you start interacting with people, and it is a team thing. So when you write software, it's often in teams. So you need to be able to communicate with the people who you're writing it for, but then also there'll be people helping you to write it. So you'll have, you know, like a team of say 6 people and you're all working on the same piece of software. You need to like figure out who's doing what bits, who's like best at the sort of design aspects. So you would put them on the front end of things. So they would be like designing all the screens. Whereas if somebody's not so visual, they will probably be better at the database side of things. So they'll be in like the back area of the system and doing that kind of thing. So you need to be able to communicate really well, and that is a really important skill.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's really important in most jobs, but certainly I guess when you're client facing.
Yeah.
So you've mentioned that you got more specialized when you went to university because you knew what you wanted to do then. But if you go back to school, what sort of topics were you interested in at that time?
My favorite topics at school were probably like business studies. I really enjoyed, and then computing, obviously. But I also I enjoyed maths as well. That's a bit strange to say. Not many people enjoy maths, but but then like history as well. So I really enjoyed history. So, I think when I was at school, I kind of just did subjects that I enjoyed. But yeah, I think like business studies and computing more was my main interest really. And I don't know if that was because I did actually enjoy them or if that was kind of in the back of my mind. I knew that was what I wanted to do in future. But yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really good piece of advice for people at school is, having to consider in the future, but also just doing things that you enjoy because you're a bit better at them.
Yeah. I
And
think
then,
you're always going to be better at stuff that you enjoy. Do you know what I mean? Like it's just common
yeah,
sense, isn't it? Really, like if you enjoy something, you are going to probably be better at it.
yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I think that's good for people to hear.
Yeah.
So you've already said that when you were at school, you had an idea of this is what you want to do, but apart from the kind of technical skills that you learned at uni, what sort of other skills did you learn throughout your studies that you would say you use daily in your job?
So like I think English has really been really important. So most people, like when I said I was doing English at A level and they knew that I wanted to do computer science, they were like, well, that's not really like a correlation. But the amount of emails that I have to send every day and like how often I have to communicate with people like by writing to them on whatever platform, whether that's email or like instant messaging systems that we've got. And then just like writing documentation for code as well. So when you're working on a big system, you'll often have to write documentation so that everybody knows what each part of it does. And then if they come back to it in future, they can read the documentation and try and understand the software. So that is really important, like being able to communicate with good English. I think that's very important too.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's probably the main one.
And that's a good sort of core subject as well. If you're maybe not sure what you want to end up doing, you could quite easily go down loads of different paths with that one there. So I think that's really interesting to hear that actually you might know what you want to do or you might not, but there's still the subjects are there to kind of help you go forward and you can figure it out as you go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I guess lastly, I could keep talking to you about this all day, but what advice could you give to someone who's considering maybe for the first time considering starting their own business, who might still be at school? What key advice would you have for them?
I think I kind of touched on this before, that you need a bit of experience before you can kind of just start your own business. So you need experience of working with clients and you need experience of doing the actual job in a real life scenario. And I think if you were to just do that when you left school, it might be a bit risky. I would potentially, it doesn't have to be for as long as me. So I was kind of a bit dubious about leaving work, even though I knew I wanted to start a business deep down. It was sort of, should I do it? And I was a bit scared because it is a daunting thing, really. But it doesn't have to be as long as I kind of left it, which was like 5 or 6 years. But just getting a bit of experience, and whether that's doing like internships or getting a bit of work experience, I think that would be really useful because you can kind of learn from other people who are doing it already. Basically, that would be my advice.
And I think that's great advice. Just going out there, get some experience. Maybe it helps you figure out you don't like what you thought you might like, or vice versa.
Yeah.
Just sort of taking it from there.
Yeah, because in tech, there's so many different areas. There's like anything from database admin to sort of creating video games, they're very different. Even though you would probably still do a similar subject at university, or like a vocational course. You would probably do a similar one of those, but when you actually get to industry, the range of roles is just like massive, and there's so many different technologies, there's different languages that you can write software in. So it's about finding the one that's best for you, and I think the only way to do that is to get experience of doing like as much of it as you can, and then you'll have an idea.
Yeah, no, I think that's great because as we know in the Northeast, there's so many tech companies, and with it lots of opportunities for people to just sort of like you say, get stuck in and see what you're good at, see what you enjoy, and see what comes of it. So I think that's definitely good. Well, thank you so much, Chris. This has
No
been
problem.
really, really interesting. I'm sure everyone who's watching will find this really insightful. And hope you have a lovely rest of your day.
Thank you very much. You too.
Thanks, Chris.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.